The year 1978 has arrived, 15th of the era of Aquarius, and the human multitudes still ignore what the Christ is. People adore the Christ statue, but do not know anything about the internal Christ. Many blood has been spilled in the name of Christ. There have been inquisitions, murders, exploitations, and rapes through the course of the centuries, all of that in his name. But we repeat, even now, many ignore who the Christ really is. Christ is the fire of the fire, the flame of the flame, the astral signature of the fire. On top of the cross of the martyr of Calvary is defined the mystery of Christ with a single word that has 4 letters, INRI, Ignis Natura Renovator Integram. The fire renovates nature constantly. That is its exact meaning. The advent of Christ in the heart of the man is a fact that transforms us radically. Christ is the solar logos, perfect multiple unity. Christ is the life that palpitates in the entire universe. He is what has always been, what will always be. So much has been said about the cosmic drama of Christ, and undoubtedly this drama is formed by 4 Gospels. It has been said to us that that cosmic drama was delivered to earth by the Elohim. The great Lord of Atlantis represented that drama in flesh and bone. The great Kabir Jesus had to represent the same drama publicly in the Holy Land. But even if the Christ were born 1,000 times in Bethlehem, it would not be useful if he does not born in our heart. Even if he would have died and resurrected on the 3rd day, it would not be useful either if he does not die and resurrects in us also. To try to discover the nature and essence of the fire is to try to discover God, whose real presence has always been revealed under an igneous appearance. The burning bramble, Exodus 3:2. And the fire of Sinai produced when the Decalogue was given, Exodus 19:18, are 2 manifestations of God to Moses. Under the figure of a being of jasper and sardonyx of flame color, sat on an incandescent and shining throne, St. John describes the owner of the universe, Apocalypse 4:3-5. Our God is a devouring fire, writes St. Paul in his epistle to the Hebrews. The inner Christ, who is celestial fire, has to be born in us when we have advanced enough in the esoteric work. The inner Christ has to eliminate from our psychological nature the causes of the errors, that is to say, the I's causes. The dissolution of the ego's causes would not be possible if the Christ has not been born in us. The living and philosophical fire, the inner Christ, is the fire of the fire, the pure of the pure. The fire covers and bathes all our body. It comes to us through the air, water, and earth, which are the elements that can serve it and its different vehicles. The celestial fire has to crystallize in us. The celestial fire is the inner Christ, our profound inner Savior. The inner Lord has to take charge of our psyche, of the 5 cylinders of the organic machine, of all our mental, emotional, instinctive, and sexual processes. Certainly the inner Christ appears internally when we work in the dissolution of the psychological I. It is obvious that the inner Christ only comes in the top moment of our intense efforts and voluntary sufferings. The advent of the Christic fire is the most important event of our life. Then, the inner Christ takes charge of all our mental, emotional, motor, instinctive, and sexual processes. The inner Christ certainly is our profound inner Savior. He, being perfect, when he enters in us, it seems to be imperfect. Being chaste, it seems that he would not be chaste. Being just, it seems as he would not be just. This is the same as the different reflections of light. If we use blue glasses, everything will look like blue. And if we use them with a red color, we will see all the things under that color. He, even being white from outside, will be seen by each one with the personal psychological crystal. That is why people even seeing him do not see him. When he takes charge of our psychological processes, the Lord of Perfection suffers tremendously. Transformed into a man living among the men, he will have to pass through many tests and unspeakable temptations. The temptation is fire. The triumph over temptation is light. The initiate has to learn to live dangerously. In this form, it is written, and this is known by the alchemists. The initiate has to follow with firmness the path of the razor's edge, because at each side of the path there exist frightful abysses. In the difficult path of the ego's dissolution, there exist complex paths that obviously have their root in the real path. Certainly, from the path of the razor's edge, there start multiple paths that go nowhere. Some of them lead us to abyss and desperation. There exist paths that could transform us into majesties of determined zones of the universe, but that in no way would lead us to the entrails of the eternal cosmic common Father. In the work of the I's dissolution, we need to give ourselves up to the inner Christ in a complete and integral form. Sometimes problems of difficult solution appear. Suddenly the paths miss its way in inexplicable labyrinths, and we do not know where it continues. Only the obedience to the inner Christ and to the Father that is in secret can in those cases orientate us wisely. The path of the razor's edge is full of dangers inside and outside of it. The conventional moral is not useful. The moral is a slave of the customs, the epoch, and the place. What was moral in past times now is immoral. What was moral in the Middle Ages in these times is immoral. What is moral in one country, in another is immoral, etc. In the work over the dissolution of the ego, sometimes it happens that when we think that we are fine, it results that we are very wrong. The changes are indispensable during the esoteric work, but the reactionary people remain trapped in the past, petrified in the time, and thunder and lighten against us as we realize profound psychological advances and radical changes. People do not resist the changes of the initiate. They want him to remain petrified in the multiple yesterdays. Any change attained by the initiate is immediately classified as immoral. Seen the things from this angle, in the light of the Christic work, we can see clearly the inefficiency of the moral codes that have been written in this world. Undoubtedly, the manifest Christ, and however hidden in the heart of the real man, when he takes charge of our different psychological states, and being unknown by the people, is as a fact qualified as cruel, immoral, and perverse. Obviously, the unconscious and asleep people only want an historic Christ, anthropomorphic, the Christ statue of unbreakable dogmas, in where they can accommodate their rancid moral codes, prejudgments, and concepts. People are unable to imagine the inner Christ in the heart of man. The multitudes only adore the Christ statue, and that is all. When one talks to the multitudes, when one explains the crude realism of the revolutionary Christ, of the red Christ, of the rebellious Christ, one is immediately qualified as blasphemous, heretic, evil, profaner, etc. That is how the multitudes are, always unconscious, always asleep. Now we will comprehend why the Christ crucified in the Golgotha exclaims with all the forces of his soul, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." The Christ, by himself being one, seems to be many. For that reason it has been said that he is the perfect multiple unity. He that knows, the word gives power. Nobody has ever pronounced it, nobody will pronounce it, but he that has incarnated it. To incarnate the Christ is fundamental in the work over the death of the pluralized I. The Lord of Perfection works in us according to the conscious efforts we make in the work on ourselves. The work that the inner Christ has to do within our own psyche is frightfully painful. As a matter of fact, our inner master has to live his via crucis in the very depths of our own soul. It is written, "To God praying and with the mace working." It is also written, "Help yourself and I will help you." To beg to the Divine Mother Kundalini is fundamental when we want to dissolve undesirable psychological aggregates. However, the inner Christ in the profoundest levels of himself works wisely according to his own responsibilities, which he has put on his shoulders. Now we will comprehend in a better form why it is difficult to be a real Christian. To be a Christian means to have incarnated the profound inner real being. It means to have soul and spirit, the being. Only he that has incarnated the being can live according to the precepts of the Christ. Satan, the pluralized I, can never live according to the sacred precepts of the Christ, because Satan is Satan and nothing else. There exist over the face of earth 7 kinds of people, classified from the viewpoint of authentic Christianity. This classification is as follows. The instinctive man. This type of person is superficial, just observes the religious ceremonies but not understanding them, and only contents himself with the external things. The emotive or sentimental man. This kind of person, as soon as he cries before the saints of his devotion, he is preparing inquisitional bonfires to burn alive those that do not have his own religious principles and whom he qualifies as heretics. The religious wars were always provoked by this class of people. The intellectual man. This type of person is merely intelectively religious, that is to say, they interpret the sacred texts with the intellective subjective reasoning. For this reason they do not know anything about the illuminated intellect, nor by any means about intuition. There is abundance of them among the Adventists, Anglicans, Jehovah's Witnesses, etc. The man that begins to search the secret path, the path of the razor's edge, and listens to the initiates. This class of people abounds in all the schools of theosophy, Rosicrucians, Yogism, Christianity Rosicrucian, as the one of Max Heindel, spiritualism, etc. They are people that begin the fight for attaining the truth. They yearn the inner self-realization, even though they are in danger of getting lost among the confused labyrinths of pseudo-esoteric and pseudo-occult theories. Christians with grave errors, because they have not annihilated the pluralized I. Perfect Christians, but that suffer a lot fighting for the annihilation of the remnants of the pluralized I. Christians absolutely perfects, Christians without remnants of the psychological I, great masters, totally self-realized. This same order, these 7 stages of religiosity, can be applied to Buddhism and all the great confessional religions. A Christian absolutely perfect can only be the one that has attained the Gnostic initiation. Every Buddha that renounces to the blissfulness of nirvana for love to humanity, after many sufferings and voluntary efforts, can reach the Gnostic initiation. The Buddha Jesus, the great Kabir, received that initiation at the border of the Jordan River when John baptized him. In those moments, the resplendent dragon of wisdom, that is to say, the inner Christ, incarnated in Jesus. John is a Christ also, because he incarnated his inner Christ. In the same manner, the venerable master of wisdom Kuthumi also incarnated his inner Christ. Hermes, Buddha, Quetzalcoatl, Zarathustra, Krishna, Lao Tse, and many other great avatars are Christs also, we repeat, because they incarnated the inner Christ. In reality, the Christ is not a human individual nor divine. Christ is a cosmic substance, universal and infinite. For this reason, Paul of Tarsus invites us to form the Christ within ourselves, that is to say, invites us to assimilate inside of the human organism, inside of the soul and the being, that marvelous substance called Christ. What we are affirming here is not accepted by those classified in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd levels of people. The men of the 4th type begin to accept it, and obviously, the ones of the 5th accept it and fight to realize it practically. Those of the 6th type have realized it in a relative manner, and the ones of the 7th type have already realized it totally. So, Christ is the solar logos, the perfect multiple unity. In the logos there does not exist the individuality, nor by any means the I, the ego. In him, all of us are one. He is the army of the voice, the great word, the verb. We repeat, so much has been written and said about Jesus of Nazareth, and in the streets have appeared many false Christs. Not long ago, a megalomaniac was absolutely convinced he was Jesus the Christ. He grew his beard and hair, he took away the pants, the shoes, and begun using sandals, later proclaimed everywhere that he was Jesus the Christ. Naturally, some simple and credulous people really believed what that person was saying. That megalomaniac taught Black Tantrism, wrote some books, and founded an organization that orders to spill the sexual energy. Fortunately, that megalomaniac imposter is dead, but before he made a great damage to this poor, painful humanity. The most curious and serious in all of this are the justifications that are used when a false Christ dies. The followers justify his death with words like this: "In a short time you will see me again, because I go to the Father." It is amazing to observe how the tenebrous use the words of the gospel and how they deceive others using the same words of Jesus the Christ, words of the one in whose mouth never existed a lie. The divine Rabbi of Galilee warned it clearly. "Then if any man shall say unto you, Lo, here is the Christ, or these, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elected." In reality, the elected ones can be counted with the fingers of one hand, because only can be considered as elected those who crystallize soul and incarnate the being. He that yearns the attaining of the total Christification has to be revolutionary, because the path of the razor's edge is totally revolutionary. Every true revolutionary becomes a Buddha. Every true revolutionary transforms himself into a Christ. Those that definitively do not create soul nor spirit are lost. They break every connection with the divine monad, Atman Buddhi Manas. Those become members of the mineral kingdom and enter in that region. All the confessional religions have symbolized that kingdom with their infernos. Let us remember the Greek Tartarus, the Avicii, the Roman Avernus, the Chinese Inferno, the Christian Inferno, etc., etc., etc. In the mineral kingdom is the involution. It is a fall into the past. It is a return through the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdoms. The final result of such misfortune is the disintegration. Certainly, that is the objective of the involution in the mineral kingdom. It is necessary to dissolve the ego in the Avicii in order to free the Buddhata. Every authentic school of regeneration knows that and wants to save the man. The schools of regeneration produce adepts, true masters of the Great White Lodge. The Gnostic movement is an authentic school of regeneration. In the world, there exists thousands of schools that promise wonders, but only the authentic schools of regeneration can produce true masters of major mysteries with powers over the fire, the air, the water, and the earth. There can exist many religions, orders, and sects, but only the schools of regeneration can produce angels and Mahatmas. The schools of regeneration have the great honor of having produced masters as Buddha, Jesus, Dante, Hermes, Quetzalcoatl, etc., etc., etc. Dear reader, do not let to be deceived. And school that does not teach the three basic factors for the consciousness revolution is not a true school of regeneration. Any school that teaches the path of fornication is not a school of regeneration. Inverencial peace. Samael on Weor.